Well, we're on a beautiful spring day on the James River, right next to the Horseshoe Dam, a historical dam that would have, this is where the boats would have been entering the canal to enter the city of Lynchburg way back when, 1800s, and many of the mills that all operated in the town were powered by water that was sent downtown by this diversion right here behind us. Right next to Scott's Mill Dam, right behind me. So a riverkeeper serves as the eyes, ears, and voice of a river, or a coast, or any body of water. So there are over 200 waterkeepers now worldwide that are the eyes, ears, and voice of their waterways. So I'm here to try and engage individuals, communities, government officials to act on behalf of our water resources. James River Association is the largest nonprofit organization, membership-based organization working to protect and to restore the James River. Starting up this summer, we'll be having lots and lots of events on the river that trying to get people into the river, exposed to the river. And JRA works to bring students out on the river every day. We also do watershed restoration projects. We're involved with General Assembly and making certain that the laws are being enforced and good laws are on the books to protect our water. Richmond is drinking everything that Lynchburg flushes. So it's important to for other folks, and not just folks in Lynchburg, but folks downstream and upstream. Depend on our water resources, and it's an asset. It should be something, not necessarily a place to dump pollution and wastes, which it was for many, many years, but an asset to a community and a symbol of our health as a community, as a society. James River is, by act of Congress, America's founding river. The first European colony in this great country was on the banks of the James River. James River is a huge resource. It's the reason why many of these towns, just like Lynchburg, Richmond, and many others are where they are, because this is the I-64, the I-81, the highway of the pre-railroad days. James River is certainly facing challenges from stormwater from urban, suburban sources. Those are really being looked at closely for the first time in a long time, really the first time ever. We certainly have issues in the upper and the middle James River with agricultural issues as well. Sediment, too much dirt. Unfortunately, we have not seen the improvements in sediment. When you think of a big rainfall, what does this river look like? It doesn't look like what it looks like right now. It turns very brown, and it just gets more so as you go farther downstream. So we're really working hard to improve and remove the sedimentation, which protects habitat, reduces costs on individuals for treating their water, to clean it. And it's important for anyone who uses the river, fishermen, paddlers alike. About a third of all Virginians live in the land that drains to the James River. About 1 out of 3 Virginians are impacting this river every day.
Can that be in a positive way or a negative way?
That's our choice, isn't it? Right. I think we've got a history of both positives and negatives, and we want to really emphasize the positives and encourage people to realize that, you know, Richmond was, and near Richmond in the Hopewell area was the site of a massive spill of a chemical known as ketone, which is an insecticide. It shut down commercial and recreational fisheries for over a decade. This was not that long ago, 1970s. It's also a big part of the passage of the Clean Water Act in 1972. And as a result, Outside Magazine voted the city of Richmond as the best river city ever last year. That's a pretty significant change in a relatively short amount of time. So give it a chance, and given a lot of work on our part to treat the river like less a dumping ground and more like a treasured asset, I think a river can recover, and this is a shining example of how that can happen.
I've been studying water quality for 12, 13 years in Lynchburg, and I have sampled the rivers that go into the James River, and have spent quite a bit of time looking at the biology, chemistry, physical makeup of the river. I have found that the river's impacted by a lot of things that go on throughout the area. A lot of the development and a lot of the pavement and just transportation throughout have impacted the overall quality of the river, and it has been degraded from the rivers that run into it. Some of the negative impacts are sediment, and the sediment comes in Lynchburg. The water is very muddy and full of sediment, and that tends to go into the river, and that impairs the quality. That causes it's more difficult for fish to find food when the water is rather muddy. It also brings with it nutrients called phosphorus, like fertilizers, that then run into the Chesapeake Bay and cause algae to grow. And when that grows, that really affects the ecology of the Chesapeake Bay and makes it hard for the seagrasses to grow. It impairs the amount of light that goes into the water and causes the balance, the natural balance of the system to really be thrown off, because those grasses are very, very important to the aquatic life that live in the bay. James gets about, an A, B, C, D, F scale, about a C. It's impaired, which we call impaired, meaning it's got some problems. It's still of pretty good quality, again, because of, I think, some of the water that runs above it, but it still needs a lot of work to be improved. So it works for us. It's okay, I think, to do some of the recreation that we do on it, floating down it, watching it, and looking at the wildlife and other things that live in it. But then on the other hand, it certainly doesn't have the fish populations, the quality that it could have if we really worked hard on cleaning up the surrounding area and all the water that flows into it. One way in which we've really impacted this river is that when we build our structures, streets, buildings, we've allowed the water to run over the surface, and then we put it into pipes and we dump it directly into rivers. Well, that's not natural. In natural systems, that water runs into the ground. It'll go along tree trunks and run into the ground. It will go through all different areas and go through the ground and then run into the river, which is why rivers flow when it's not raining. They get that groundwater input. And if we go back and look at ways in which we can force that water underground, it will naturally purify it, just as your septic tank, if you have one of those, will purify the water. And then it will come into the river much, much cleaner than allowing it to run through a system of pipes that it can pick up trash and other pollutants and go directly into the river. So we've really got to both think consciously as individuals how we manage, and then also I think corporately as cities and counties how we then allow water to flow into our rivers. We do nothing, the river continues to degrade, and the resiliency, which is the ability for these systems to resist change, becomes diminished, and then they continue to degrade. And at that point, these systems can break down, and the river becomes very, very polluted, very non-functional, or it doesn't even support even the most basic functions that we would desire, such as quality of drinking water, fisheries, or other things, or aesthetics. And it becomes a resource that really no one wants to be part of. And so if we don't really become diligent in trying to protect these rivers, we're going to really see not only the streams degrade all the way down to the Chesapeake Bay and the problems that the communities down below us, But really you're going to see quality of life in Lynchburg decline as you lose an extremely important resource that we have that really is attractive in this community. So you've got to be very conscious of that as we develop and we want to see, you know, Lynchburg become a place that we all enjoy and all have, you know, good experiences here. And the rivers are a very, very important part of that.
I am so proud to be a Lady Slipper. The Lady Slipper is the only bateau that participates in the James River Bateau Festival that has all-female crew. And we're real proud of the fact that some of us are old and tired, but we still make it down the river and do a good job of it. And from what I've been told, the Lady Slipper was started by a very small group. Karen Absey was a key person in that. And they decided that, I believe if they thought if the men could do this, they could too. And so they, over the years, we've gotten more and more skilled and just enjoy the river. They want to enjoy the river as much as the guys seem to be enjoying it. On crew, we carry 8 to 12 each day. 8's the perfect number, 10 is good, 12's probably too many, but it works. And we all want to be on there, but there's about 30 of us. So we rotate our days that we crew and days that we are what we call support. Carry everything down the river and have the food ready and all that. We usually have flowers on our tents when we get there. We at times have had a waiting list because there are so many supporters and folks that just love the Lady Slippers. So we put it out there when we're short, but we usually just invite someone. And if they've been on the list a long time, we say, come join us. And we'll often take a guest to see how well they fit with the crew and with the river, because it takes more than just a good personality. Sometimes I think we could use a little more muscle strength, but the good thing about the festival family is everybody helps everybody. So we know somebody will come help us, but we like to think sometimes we're more intelligent, so we think we balance, you know. I'd say physical strength can be a real challenge. That's a big boat. Pretty much would say that most folks don't know this is the 28th year that some folks have enjoyed doing the reenactment through the James River Bateau Festival. This is our 28th year. And there are folks in Lynchburg that still don't know it happens. My personal connection is love of the outdoors, but I was invited the very first year, 1986, to feed the crew of the Chief Powhatan. My husband helped build that one, and I had never heard of a bateau and didn't want to be out where the bugs and all were, but just one night, and I got river fever, and I've been connected ever since. And now I write children's books about it. It's so important to me, and I want others to share the river too, so that's my personal connection. The first book came out in 2010. The Lady Slipper found themselves in trouble. We got hung up on an old dam that was just below the surface of the water, and this was along the 7 Islands. And we got hung up so good that we could not get ourselves unstuck from the dam, and we were going to sink. So we kept bailing water and plugging holes, and finally help came along, and with some canoeists and extra bateau folk, they got us out so quickly that the boat, I was in a dangerous position, I'll put it that way. I was between the boat and the dam. Well, we all were at one point moving it, but they were so strong when they moved it so quickly, I was either going to get sucked under and drowned or crushed. So one of those young men, those strong muscles, just reached over and grabbed me, and after that was over, I decided that was such a dangerous thing that I was lucky to still have my life. So something greater than me said, you better write this down. I said, okay. So now I'm writing children's books, and I've done 3. And they tie into the river beautifully because they're all about the river. It's special because it's the border, but it's also special because it is a beautiful, beautiful jewel. Again, it's something that people can come and enjoy. They can get in it, they can sit beside it, they can fish, they can walk. They can talk or they can just be quiet and enjoy the goodness of the James River right here in Lynchburg. Yeah, I probably wouldn't mind living in Lynchburg myself, because the river runs right through my county too, or as the border, but Lynchburg's just an enjoyable city, a great place to be.
As a really young girl, I grew up close to the Roanoke River, and I lived close to a park 2 blocks from the Roanoke River. So it seems like I've always had a river in my life. But it wasn't until I was in my mid-20s, late 20s, that I actually had the opportunity to take a canoe trip on a section of the James River. And I have to tell you, I fell in love with it that day, and I have not come off the James since then. And so this time of year, my gosh, you really start thinking about scrubbing off those canoes and the kayaks and getting ready to hit the river again. So I'm really looking forward to that this spring and summer. So I've canoed the James from Lynchburg all the way down to Bremo Bluff, and every weekend I get an opportunity, I'm on the river. And it's not just about the river, it's about the water and being on the water, but it's also about the opportunity to be with friends and family and just the experience of floating. And there's not too much more that I can find in life. It's more peaceful than floating down the James.
You know, people say that rivers are very powerful and that they've created communities and brought communities together. But I find that the James River is also a place of solace, and I personally enjoy coming down to the James River just for quiet time and reflection. I think that people, if they haven't already figured that out about the James River, to come down and enjoy it as a place to just relax, stay away from a phone for a while, and see what kind of wildlife that's out here.
And Parks and Recreation has a few missions, but one of them is environmental education. And so we have great opportunities within the James River and the watershed to teach children in all generations about the importance of water quality and what the river and the water do for us. So I'm just very glad to have a river that flows along the edge of the city, and what an asset this is.
And as a naturalist for the city Parks and Recreation, I've taken groups of people to the James River, particularly our Percival's Island Park, to enjoy all of the natural wonders that the James River offers. As I said, we would go fishing with the children, but for other groups, I've taken out looking for waterfowl, insects, all kinds of amazing creatures that live along the James River.
Well, I think if you are not floating the river, you may not know how much the James changes from season to season. And along the banks will change, the trees will change, but the islands change, and the islands come and go. And so one season an island will be a small island, the next season it'll be a mid-sized island. So just the change of the water and the change of the flora and fauna along the river, so it's ever changing, it's not static. And I'm not sure that people can appreciate that unless you can get into a canoe or kayak and actually see that from year to year.
I think that through our educational programs that I can help our population understand how important it is to have healthy waters and how we can do it as a community and as simply as possible by just changing our behaviors to make our waters healthy for us. And to me, that's a legacy that we need to leave our grandchildren.
Oh, there's so many things I love about the James River. And it depends on the time of day that you're on the river, but if you hit it really early in the morning, and you can just see the fog rise up off that water and you're just floating gently down that river. There's nothing better than that. But then one of my best experiences on the James was coming into Scottsville and the bridge right at Scottsville, but it was the full moon, and it was in late fall, and it was a full moon in the late fall, and that moon was so huge and bright. It was like the harvest moon. And so these opportunities and the beauty that you can see, there's nothing like it.
I have a really deep connection to the James River spiritually as well as physically. I live about 15 minutes away from the river at the site of a place that was the largest Monacan town that we know about before the Europeans arrived. So in a sense, I'm always home. And the James River is a place that we considered the center of our homeland. In the old times, we didn't have vehicles, and so we used canoes to get back and forth. The river was essentially our highway. We would locate our communities on both sides of the river, and so the river effectively became Main Street, and we would go back and forth. Even small children knew how to operate a dugout canoe, and so that was the way we got from one place to the next. It was also a source of sustenance because we had to have clean water, for washing and cooking and so on, and for agriculture. We were a farming people, and so it was very important that we located our communities near the river. And the James River, being a central source, it was the middle of our homeland. And so it was the most important body of water to the Monacan people that we could have imagined. There are still the remnants of fish weirs at points in the James River that are left over from Monacan Indians more than 400 years ago. You have to know where to look.
What is a fish weir?
It's a net made out of sticks, so essentially a trap. And the net would be constructed across the whole body of the river, and the fish would swim into it, and the trap got progressively smaller so they wouldn't be able to find their way out. And then periodically the native people would come by and harvest those fish. I think I would want people to know that all of our rivers are essential parts of our history as well as our contemporary existence. We couldn't be here without them. They are, the way that our history was constructed is based on the accessibility of water. And it's also a way to have delineated cultural groups. And what I'm thinking of is the fall line was the dividing line between the Powhatan territory and the Monacan territory. Later, the fall line became the place where the cities sprung up because you couldn't bring a large boat farther upriver. And so when we look at a map of Virginia, the fall line has the cities on it, Washington, D.C., Fredericksburg, Richmond are all located on that line. And that's the place where Monacan homeland started. But it's so much older than we might think about today. It's a very old, essential place. I think I would like people to know that this wasn't always the James River. Originally it was called the Powhatan River. It's named after an Indian, and everything around us had an Indian name because the people knew and loved this place. They had already named it. And so Europeans showed up, they named things in the way that made sense to them. They changed the topography, but they also changed linguistic values. So we see words today like, Monacan Bridge, and people don't understand, that profound connection to the land and to the geography around them. I think the biggest challenge to us today is an environmental one. For so long, people felt like a river was just a source of resources to extract. And we took the fish and we took the different elements that we needed without really thinking about how to give back. Native culture is all about reciprocity and understanding there's a relationship there. It's a web of entanglements, really, between different life forms. And if you take fish, you need to be able to put back in some way, because nothing lasts forever and nothing is unending. And so the challenge we have now, we've lost so much of that supply of what we think of as resources. Native people think of it as relationships. So how can we build those essential relationships in such a way that we are sustaining ourselves rather than continuing to degrade the quality of the water and the life forms in it? And Native people were forced away from the water and forced away from the fertile lands, so we haven't had a connection with those areas in quite some time. We had to find other ways to live. So the more powerless we became, the further from the river we became physically located. I feel sad about that because I feel really connected to the river. Sitting here, it makes me feel good. You know, it gives me a sense of peace of mind that I can't get in another place. You know, this is home. And so to be shut out from that space for so long profoundly affected how we see our own identity. Now we're able to come back and visit, but it's not that connection that feels like home in the same way. In the old days, our people were intimately familiar with the river itself and its cycles and its power. You can look around here and see evidence of the river's power. Everything here has been underwater. And so it's an incredibly powerful natural force that we need to understand and respect. And the only way to do that is to spend a lot of time observing and interacting with the life forms that surround the river and with the river itself. It's always different. Every day it's different.
Well, most people don't know that the river as we see it today is not actually as it was, say, 200 years ago. Almost every rapid on the James River has been altered. In the pursuit of expansion westward, we had to improve inland navigation, not just on the James River, but other rivers all over the East Coast. We did that by actually going out and physically chiseling or blowing holes in the rock ledges and then building stone walls to be used either to direct water or to allow a mule to assist a bateau ascending the river, carrying what we call market goods back up to Lynchburg and beyond the Blue Ridge. So most people don't realize when they roll up to a rapid or float up to a rapid, they see this beautiful wave train going through it and they think, oh, just what a blessing, you know. Well, a lot of hard work went into that. A couple hundred years ago, there were guys out there risking life and limb to make those passages, and that was, you know, that's a little known aspect of the James River that played a vital role in our success with our expansion westward. At one point in time, Lynchburg was actually the wealthiest city in the country, and that was because of the tobacco business that was going on here. That was allowed to happen. The reason Lynchburg was picked was because of its central location. That was good, but more importantly than that, this river. Initially with bateaus, we were able to easily ascend and descend from Lynchburg. This was a good point of operation. It allowed people north and south of the Blue Ridge and east of the Blue Ridge a place to get their product to basically out of their hands and into a buyer's hand who would then move it to wherever it was going to go, whether it be shipped to England or processed and sent back upriver. Now, when the canal came along, that really changed Lynchburg's world because it put us on the map. We were the point when you left Richmond. I mean, sure, there were a bunch of other stops along the way, but Lynchburg was the goal. That was, if you got to Lynchburg, you could operate efficiently, you could do business in a much more efficient manner. Being able to get from Richmond to Lynchburg or vice versa quickly and relatively safely and comfortably made Lynchburg one of the wealthiest cities in the country. It didn't hold the title as the wealthiest long, but it did allow the city to have lots of luxuries. Like Lynchburg had running water in its households in the mid-1800s. Very few cities in the country could boast that. We can attribute that to the canal. The very system in which the water system worked was actually powered by the canal. The river is very healthy right now. The James River's in a very good place. Like I mentioned, we do have our battles, things that we have to continually work on. But as far as the overall health of the James River, you know, our biomass is booming. You know, our fish populations are doing well. Our shad, our smallmouth, our muskies, our different species of catfish, crappie, largemouth, perch, you name it, we're seeing good, healthy populations. Is it best? No. Can we get to best? I think we can. In my lifetime, this river has changed so much. When I was a child, people would think you were crazy if you brought your children to swim in the river below Lynchburg. You didn't do that. That was off limits. Also, people thought you were crazy if you were eating fish out of the James River below Lynchburg. Now, we don't think twice about taking the kids down and playing in the river, and I'll catch a catfish, and if it meets the state's requirements, it also meet my dinner requirements. Not so long ago, we couldn't do that. So the overall health of the river is good. The James River is healthy, the fish are healthy, our different species, as far as our vegetation, our grasses, doing pretty good. So we walk a very delicate, very fine line between getting better and doing better and falling backwards and losing what we've gained up to this point. As a passionate river lover, I lay down in bed at night and worry about this river like I do my children. You know, it can be taken and damaged so easily. We have to cherish it and protect it and do everything we can to make sure it's healthy and active.
We are the Virginia Canals and Navigation Society statewide organization. And we try to work very hard with individuals and other river groups around the state.
We try to partner with those local organizations.
Yeah.
Folks that may never have known anything about us, but we say, hey, you've got something great here.
Yeah.
What are we doing with it? And we'd like to explore it. The James River Canal, as it began in Richmond, is the oldest canal in the country with locks for improvement of river navigation. It's just an incredible treasure.
So then later on, the James River and Canal Company was formed to build a continuous canal. As this country became more prosperous, had more money, more taxes, a private company built a continuous canal. So instead of having bateaus, you would have big, huge, these were huge boats, 93 feet long, 15 feet wide. They were bigger than tractor trailers.
The Marshall was a grand boat called a packet, of which there were two, an iron-hulled vessel. These boats were huge, and they provided comfortable accommodations so that folks were able to travel upriver and down. These boats would have passed through here on a very regular basis, providing that transportation, and that was the way the fast mail went through. They traveled at about 4.5 miles per hour, perhaps, and
they weren't allowed to go to speed.
Faster than that, the lake would actually cause some washing of the banks. And,
yeah, that was both.
They were not supposed to have the horses any more than a slow trot.
So it would have come right through here. All these boats. This is the only place they could go. They had to go through this arch going up and down the river. And that was the passenger boat. That was high class. It's like a cruise line of the time. And the towpath, the mules would have been under here on this side. This is the towpath. And the mules pulling the boats had to go under the arch too. So there was, right where he's standing, maybe 5 or 10 feet down, nobody knows how far down, was the towpath. This has been filled in so much. And you don't really want to dig it out because the river would get in here. And so we're satisfied for it to be left as it is. But the top of the arch there it had to be over your head when this was being used. We'd love to put a replica of a boat right in here. And a full-size boat like that packet boat in the picture. They were generally 93 feet long and up to 14.5 feet wide. So if you measure out 100 feet or 93 feet right here, it's big.
And while we're talking about
it's bigger than you think.
While we're talking about big, we are standing actually at a level higher than the water in the canal was then.
Yep.
So you think about how much has been filled in. And from what we read, we understand that these walls you see here represented what was 10 feet deep in parts of this basin. So we're not even, we're well above the level of the water here.
Yeah.
So how deep are those walls? 15, 20 feet
So,
deeper
yeah.
than what you see
So
there.
who knows?
This was an amazing structure that formed this lower basin, and the upper basin was similar. But that was an amazing structure for them to be building. Think about the technology. This was all constructed in the 1830s, 40s.
Yeah, 30s and 40s. So this is the best place Lynchburg has for a canal park, to show the canal, this arch. And across the parking lot, there was an aqueduct. On the other side of the parking lot was an aqueduct that took boats across Blackwater Creek. And you can still see the remains of that.
Well, we grew up on this river here. If you go back to when John Lynch had his ferry here, right over by 9th Street, we're a river town. The bateaus, the movement of goods, products, especially down the Richmond with the tobacco, so there's a lot of history involved here. And the city's on the river, so there's nothing you can do about that now except appreciate what we have. If you look over at Bluff Walk across the river here, and the park on the other side and the Lynchburg side, there have been great strides made to make the river accessible to the citizens, as they have over here at the River Edge Park on the Amherst County side. So any kind of access to the river, improving the access, will get people down here to use that resource. And once they see it, and they're not laboring under the old thoughts about, oh, it's really polluted or whatever, then they're going to start using the river. And when they start using the river, they're going to really be attuned to the quality of the water.
Well, Lynchburg, of course, has had a relationship since its infancy with the river. I think it's important from a tourism standpoint. I think some of the work that's been done along the riverfront to reconnect the city to the riverfront is very, very important. The river is a source potentially of drinking water for us. It is one of our sources of drinking water, so it's important for that reason. And it's also important because it's where our wastewater goes when we're done with it. So it's we are tied to the river very, very intimately, and we need to understand that and respect that.
I would say that the quality of the James is so much improved that people still think it's 30 years ago and you have all the pollution. And it's not that bad at all. If you look at the James River Association report cards each year, things are improving for wildlife, the fish, the water quality. Now we've got some ways to go with water quality, but you have to balance that with the industries that are on the river, and the economic conditions where people are employed upstream.
Well, being a Lynchburger, I have a strong connection to the James, but beyond that, I'm a river rat for the James River Association, which means I patrol a stretch of the river upstream from here and monitor water quality. I spend a lot of time in the summer and whenever I can on the river. And then actually I have a broader responsibility as the city manager of Lynchburg to make sure that the water we put back into the river after it's used by the citizens of Lynchburg and the industries of Lynchburg, that water is clean and meets all the quality standards so that we're not causing a problem with the river downstream of us.
Well, first of all, don't be pouring foreign substances into your drain at home. That has to go through the sewage treatment plant where they can't do an adequate job of, like, oils or stuff like that. That's going to end up in the river. So just watch what you put down the drain, number one. Well, you have the runoff. You have the pollution runoff, both industrial and from livestock, and fertilizer from the farms and so forth. And I sure would like to see the cattle kept out of the river. If you go downstream on the Amherst side, you'll still see cows in the river, and that's not a good thing. I'd like to see farmers take advantage of some of those cost-sharing programs and fence their cattle off from the river.
A river rat is a member of the James River Association who has the responsibility to, has accepted the responsibility to patrol a certain section of river, and we have river rats from the headwaters all the way down to the Chesapeake Bay. We patrol a section of river, we write up a report, we monitor what we see, if it's things like erosion, cattle in the river, if we see an illicit or illegal discharge, if there are tires or trash. But we'll also report that people who are enjoying the river, if they're out there fishing, maybe what kind of fish they're catching. If we see an eagle, I'll put that in my report. So we report on the wildlife that we see, and it just gives it kind of something to do when you're on the river and have some responsibility to protect the river.
But to get out here on any day on the rivers beats the work, I'll tell you. Just get out here and relax and just let your mind wander and take in the birds. We've got eagles here now. And the smallmouth bass are really great in this river. It's one of the hidden things that people really don't know about. So, I would encourage people to come on down and put in and take a jaunt on the river in your canoe or your kayak or your john boat. Use the 7th Street boat ramp, which is behind us, just upstream from the fountain, or over here at the River Edge Park, where we just put in a little bit ago. So I would just encourage people to use this natural resource that God has given us, and don't just take it for granted.
Just would encourage people to learn as much as they can about the James River and come down and enjoy it.
Well, today we're standing in front of Division 3B of the James River Interceptor. This is part of the CSO program. We've been working on the CSO program for nearly 30 years now, and the CSO program is really essential to the quality of the river because what we're doing is essentially eliminating the flow of raw sewage into the river. And since we started, we've made tremendous progress. This project is actually the last piece of a 7.25 mile long pipeline from the wastewater treatment plant all the way up to Rusin's Dam. When we started with the CSO program, we were discharging over 1 billion gallons of raw sewage into the James River on an annual basis. Today we're discharging less than 200 million gallons, so we've had an 80% reduction in the amount of raw sewage going into the river. So we've made significant progress towards cleaning up the river. CSO stands for Combined Sewer Overflow. And if you've been around Lynchburg any length of time, you've known that we've been tearing up roads and neighborhoods for a long time now. The Combined Sewer Overflow program is where we go and separate the sanitary sewer from the storm system. When it was originally built, the idea was to convey the wastewater away from homes as quickly as possible, as well as the stormwater, so they built it together in one pipe. And that pipe discharged to the nearest stream. And today, we need to eliminate that. The new plan is, instead of separating the remaining pipes, the sewers and the storm system, we're going to convey most of that flow to the wastewater treatment plant and treat it there before it's discharged to the river. This project behind me is a critical part of that program because it helps convey the flow to the wastewater treatment plant. There's a lot of things that the average citizen can do to help clean up the streams and rivers. We have volunteers that go and pick up trash in the streams. You need to be aware of how much fertilizer you're putting on your lawns so that you don't over-fertilize your lawns. Pick up after your pets, because pet waste is a big contributor to water quality issues. You can always get in touch with their department, the Department of Water Resources, and we have staff that will help you work with that, work with programs. We have volunteers that go out and put storm drain markers on storm drain inlets to make people aware that you don't pour any grease or oil or any type of pollutant down those drains because they go directly to the waterways. So there's a lot of things that the average citizen can do to be involved with water quality and improving the environment. We recently had a group that collected over 70 tires in a short stretch of Blackwater Creek and removed them from the stream. So there's a lot of things that everybody can do every day to make a little bit of difference that will help improve water quality. If we weren't doing projects like this with CSO, we would be continuing to discharge a lot of raw sewage into the river and streams on an annual basis. And the raw sewage is a source of bacteria and other pollutants that we want to eliminate from the river and streams. So these projects are critical in helping us clean up the streams, helping us clean up the rivers, and ultimately helping us clean up the Chesapeake Bay. So what we're doing now will impact not only the quality of the water now, but also for future generations. So these projects are absolutely essential in maintaining the health of the waterways and the James River for the long term.
This was a concrete block manufacturing place, all from here all the way down under the Carter Glass Bridge to the training school property. My father started this company back in the 40s, after the war, late 40s. We were a small manufacturing company. We catered to the home building business, and it's a great place for a plant. It was close to the city, of course. You could go up the hill, up 29, and get on the expressway. You could go through town and everything, but it's very convenient overall. Well, since it was my father's company and then mine and my brother's, we did everything. We poured concrete here for precast concrete. We made concrete block for housing and industry. Sometimes you had to drive a truck to deliver the product. And then you just did what had to be done. And it was time consuming, very hard work. And, but it was satisfying, very satisfying. Got a lot of man hours making this this product, which is now fill.
This is some of your work?
Oh yeah. This was made on a block machine, and it's well, looking at it, that's what we call a patio block. It was 8 inches wide by 16 inches long, and we sold right many of these for patios before all of this new type stone and concrete items came to be. I saw some pieces around here that were regular block. Now here's a portion of one fill.
That's a regular block.
Yeah, that's what they would build houses with and all that, foundations for houses. I think I'm hopefully pleased that the customers we had over that long, long period of time were pleased too. There sure are a lot of houses in Lynchburg with our product in them. But to go back to your question about the river, you could tell when it was going to come up and go down. It was just a way of life. But only that one time in November of '85 was devastating. During the middle of the night of the flood of '85, we knew it was going to come up, and it was going to be a big one. I mean, it had rained in Lynchburg for 2 days, continuously very heavy rain, but it had also rained in the upper reaches of the James, so it was coming. We moved trucks, equipment, product, and as much stuff as we could to higher ground, which was right up here toward the entrance, so as high as we could get it. We moved motors that would, electric motors in our production facility, and moved those up. We just disconnected them and just hung them up in the top of the production plant. They did the same over at Griffin Pipe. They had been on the river for a lot longer than we have. They're back in the 1800s. So they did the best they could. Well, it wasn't good enough. During the middle of the night, still securing stuff, it was about 4 a.m. My foreman and I went up and we looked out in the river, and if you can imagine the river being level with this property in the city of Lynchburg, and that was at 4 a.m. or so, went right in front of us an oil tanker, railroad tanker, and then a boxcar right in front of our faces. He said, "It's time to go." We went over to our major electric switch box, cut it off, and he said, "I've got the coffee pot, let's go have a seat." And we'd been working for 12 hours, really hard, getting everything ready. And when he said it's time to go, it was time to go. The next morning, I went home to get some sleep. We had been working really hard for maybe 36 hours. My brother called me, he said, "Knight, you've got to come down here and see this." And I said, "Did the river go down?" And he said, "Not exactly. It came up, it went through the office. It took our truck shop equipment away. And the river has a backwash. Funny things that would be in one portion, a coffee cup came floating upriver. You will find things in weird places. There was an ashtray that had been over in the block plant, ended up on top of a gas pump. Just floated up and sat down. Trying to reconstruct and refurbish all the machinery and the product and everything, and trying to get it, it just took a long time before the realization set in that it was not feasible. It was a godly event, and in the long run, for me, it was time to move on.
So I grew up here in Lynchburg, and from a really young age, I've always loved the river. I've just been fascinated with its history and the opportunity for adventure that it provides today. And so from a very early age, I was out here, really cut my teeth on this section right here, putting in at Smiley Block and floating down to Mount Athos, and just kind of remember in 7th, 8th grade getting a canoe and just having my eyes open to all these awesome adventures and colorful characters that you could run into on the river. And so as I got older, just kind of kept nurturing that love of the river. And I guess about the time I entered college, I had heard about the Bateau Festival and had gotten interested in that. And so I just got a couple buddies together and decided, hey, why don't we build a bateau? So from that point on, I with the assistance of Mason, I built my first boat and spent the next several years involved with the Bateau Festival. 2011, I was graduating from UVA and just didn't really have a clear idea of what I wanted to do. But I became aware of the National Geographic Young Explorers Grants, which are basically a grant program offered to people below the age of 25. And I really wanted to do something to help tell the story of the Bateau and tell the story of the James River. So I just started doing more and more research and and discovered this survey that Chief Justice John Marshall led in 1812 that was intended to determine the feasibility of a canal that would link Richmond with the Ohio River Valley in present-day West Virginia. And so when he was asked at the age of 56 by the Commonwealth of Virginia, by the legislature, if he would lead this survey from Lynchburg upriver on the James, all the way up to Covington, which is over 100 miles, over the Allegheny, down the Greenbrier, and down the New River to the Kanawha River, he jumped at the opportunity. And so in September 1st of 1812, John Marshall and a crew of boatmen, along with several other surveyors and commissioners, left from right here in Lynchburg, went upstream, up to Covington, crossed the Allegheny. In the process, they surveyed and basically laid the groundwork for the road that would become the James River and Kanawha Turnpike Road, which now today is US Route 60 over the Allegheny. They put in on the Greenbrier. In tremendous drought conditions, they descended the Greenbrier River to the point where they had the local inhabitants, of whom there were very few at this point, out in the river with mules and horses and men dragging the boat over the rocks on the shallow Greenbrier. Early October, they hit the New River at Hinton, what's now West Virginia, and continued down the New River. And what I think is the most fantastic part of the story is Marshall had turned 57 a few days prior in late September, and this 57-year-old Chief Justice of the Supreme Court descends the New River without ever having seen it before. And the New River is home to the New River Gorge, which is some of the most significant commercially rafted whitewater anywhere on the planet. And I just think it's an amazing story of this 57-year-old Chief Justice running these tremendous rapids in this 40 to 60 foot wooden boat that he dragged over the Allegheny without ever having seen it before. And so that just really inspired me, and that was really a story that I wanted to tell. So obviously you can't see it here, but just a few hundred yards upstream is Scotts Mill Dam, and in the next 30 miles upriver there are 6 more dams between here and Snowden, Virginia. So retracing Marshall's exact route just really wasn't feasible for us. And instead what we decided to do was really try to retrace the James River and Kanawha Canal's intended line. You know, our expedition was really more of a tribute to Marshall. We weren't necessarily trying to be reenactors. So we went down and bit off another 130 miles of James River, put in at Watkins Landing on April 5th of 2012, and we just started marching west. We didn't really know what it was going to hold for us. We hadn't attempted any sort of significant upriver bateauing before, and if you might imagine, it's pretty challenging to fight the current of a river like this for over 200 miles. So, but that's exactly what we did, and we had a tremendous time doing it. It was myself and a crew of 5 other guys, and really couldn't have asked for a more dedicated crew. These guys basically got up every single day, picked up a locust pole with a little metal tip on the bottom of it, walked to the front of this 40-foot long boat, dropped that pole to the riverbed, and then walked right back to the back of the boat, and did that constantly for 8 to 14 hours a day, well into the night. We raced upriver from Richmond to Lynchburg in 7 days, that's 120 miles right there. And it was really remarkable and just a tremendous adventure. So once we got to Lynchburg, we then portaged around these 30 miles of dams that you see here that I referenced earlier, and put back in at Snowden, Virginia. And that's really, right there is what we could call the James River Gorge, and it's really where the James starts to break through the Blue Ridge and begin its fall down into the Piedmont where we are now. And in the James River Gorge is Balcony Falls, which is just a fantastic Class 3 rapid that doesn't pose much of a challenge for downstream whitewater paddlers today, but you know, again, when you're trying to take a 43-foot long wooden boat against the current, it was quite a challenge. And the gorge has traditionally been a challenge. If you were a farmer upstream of the James River Gorge in the early 1800s, that gorge was your nemesis. It represented a tremendous impediment to trade. It basically, that was the gauntlet that every single crop you produced and every good you wanted to get back upstream from Richmond or finished markets had to run in order to get to where it needed to go. And there were numerous bateaux that were wrecked there, numerous lives lost, and obviously that entails a lot of cargo as well. So this was a serious issue, and we confronted it head on with a great crew, great plan, great coordination. It was a lot of rope work and pulley work, and a pretty dramatic moment in Balcony Falls itself, where we have the entire crew just pulling on this rope, everything they got, trying to come up through this rapid, and we just stalled out. And I mean, it was driving cold rain, and people are just gripping on this rope, and it's starting to give, and you see it just cutting into people's hands. And then seemingly out of nowhere, Kevin Farrell, his crew member, and among other things, experienced whitewater paddler and commercial fisherman in the Bering Sea, just ties a prusik on the line, whips out a little 3-to-1 pulley system, sets it on up, and we just pulled on up through the drop. And from there on out, you know, we continued about another 80 miles to Covington, and that was, you know, every single day, planting the pole and just walking forward one step at a time, dragging the boat up through rapids. But within a month, we'd traveled the 230 miles from Richmond to Covington, and had completed that leg of our journey. From there, we crossed over the Allegheny, and almost the exact same spot Marshall had in 1812, we put in on the Greenbrier. Unlike Marshall, we had tremendous water on the Greenbrier, and it was just a breath of fresh air. We were just floating downstream, carefree. People all in West Virginia were incredibly excited to see us, and we had a great time on the Greenbrier. Made our way down to the New, to Sandstone Falls, which is a big 23-foot waterfall in the New River that we portaged with a pair of Belgian draft horses, and that was one of the most interesting parts of the trip, because that's where William Richmond lives, and in 1812, John Marshall stayed with the Richmond family at that site. And he was a guy who connected with our story in a way that few other people did. And it was really incredible to just kind of reflect with him and think back on what it must have been like for his ancestors living on what was then the American frontier, to have the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, the most influential figure in American law, just come and stay in their living room. I thought that was pretty remarkable, and so did the Richmonds today. But anyhow, so we continued on downstream from there, and arrived at the New River Gorge within a few days, and from there on out we scouted the gorge, and at pretty high water we had a really successful descent of the gorge, incredible white water, and it was an incredible ride, incredible journey, and that pretty much capped off the Marshall expedition.